all are doing good. Welcome back to our second video, which is about migrating a localhost WordPress database to RDS database. So this is my WordPress EC2, wherein I have hosted my WordPress website. So this is the domain of the site. If I refresh the page, you can see the website is working fine. And if I connect to this EC2 and show you the WP config file of this particular WordPress file system. So this is the WP config file, and as you can see here, the database is localhost database. So in case of localhost database, the database is hosted on the same server, that is this EC2. I'll explain this with a diagram over here. So currently what is happening is, this is my EC2 and it is hosting my WordPress file system, and it is containing the database as well, which is the MySQL database. So currently this WordPress system is connected to this database, but later on, once we complete this migration, the WordPress file system will point to an RDS database which is outside of this EC2. So as I showed you earlier as well, that the database is currently set to localhost, and these are the database credentials. So if I do sudo mysql, I have entered the username of mysql, as you saw that from the wp config file, and then I'll set the password to be yes. I'll enter the password, and you can see MySQL has been connected. If I do show databases, it will show me the database that is connected to my WordPress file system at the moment. So what we'll do is we'll need to export a backup of this current database, and then we will import the same backup to our RDS database. So what I'll do, I'll open MySQL Workbench. I'll set a new connection over here. Localhost DB. So here I'll need to set it to standard TCP/IP, and I'll need the EC2 public IP address of this particular EC2. I'll copy it from here. I'll paste it here. Here I have to enter the SSH username. The username that we enter while connecting to a particular EC2, that is this username over here, which is the Ubuntu. And then I'll need to select the key file. I'll check the key file of my EC2 over here, which is named as WordPress. We'll go here. So I've set the file path of my key file, and then MySQL hostname will be the hostname of the SQL that we saw in the WP config file. You can type in localhost over here or keep it as it is, and then the default port for localhost database is 3306, and then username in my case is WP user, or a root will work as well, because the username that I have set is a secondary username. Like, I have multiple users over there, so we can use root as well, but I'll prefer using WP user. And then I'll enter the password. Again, you can find all these credentials in the WP config file. So the connection has been made. I'll connect to this database. And this is the database of my website. If I show you, it says the URL is papernet.com. So what I'll do is I'll go to administration. I'll do data import and export. I'll go to export first. I'll select this database. Make sure you have the dump structure and data over here, because we will be importing this directly into a new database. It will create the schema itself. So we need to select export to self-contained file. I will name it as migration.sql. I'll enable this and then I'll start the export. So now the export is running. It will take some time, maybe couple of minutes to complete. Yeah, as you can see, it has been finished. So now what we'll do is we'll start an RDS server on our AWS. So I'll go to RDS. I'll create a new database. I'll select it to be MySQL. You can choose the engine version to whatever you want. Let's keep it to default for now. So I'll select the free tier over here. I'll name it as migrated DB. The master username, the space is not allowed. So master username, I'll keep it as a root. Select manage, I'll enter the password for this particular new database. We'll generate a new password. No. So I'll save the password here so that I don't forget it later. This is the password that I've set. So I'll select the T3 micro because this is a free tier RDS server. You'll need to enable the public access. You can over here you can connect it to the EC2 that the EC2 that needs to point to this database. But what we can do is we can set it up manually as well. I think in this video I'll show you how to connect this EC2 to this like your EC2 to this RDS manually rather than connecting it automatically. I think this much is enough, and additional we don't need to change anything. We can initialize a database over here. We can do it later as well, but let's do it here. I think it will be better if I show you how to initialize a database manually later on. So the database is being created. So in this security group, what we need to do is we need to set a rule so that the EC2 is able to connect to this. but currently as we kept the public accessible to be yes. That is why it has automatically created this rule wherein it is letting all MySQL Aurora traffic to all the IP addresses trying to connect to it. You can later on, what we can do is we can edit this, and instead of setting the IP address to be any IP address, we can simply copy the IP address of this EC2, that is this IP address, and put it here, and that will restrict the MySQL connection to that particular EC2 only. So that will enhance the security of your RDS, but we are not concerned about it over here right now. So I'll go back to the RDS and I'll check if my database has been created. It is still getting created. Once it will be created, we'll get this endpoint that we will need to enter in the WP config file. It is taking quite some time. So meanwhile, we'll edit the WP config file again. So here this time the password needs to change to the new password that I have set for the RDS database. The username as well, which is the root, and then the database name as well. No, database name, we can create a new database with the same name. It won't create an issue. And then the host needs to change. So we have the endpoint over here. I'll copy this endpoint and I will paste this endpoint over here. For now, I'll remove the database name because we have not created a database yet. Otherwise, it will create a confusion. I'll exit. Now, if I try accessing the website again, it is showing me an error because it's not able to find this particular database. Because it is not able to find the database. We don't have a database name over here. So I'll go to MySQL, and this time I'll create a new connection, which is the newly created RDS. Migrate DB, and this time I need to choose the connection method to be standard TCP IP. In the hostname, I'll enter the endpoint of the database, the RDS database, that is this particular endpoint. I have pasted this endpoint over here. The username is root, and enter the password of the new database. That is this password. I'll try testing the connection. The connection has been made. In case if we remove the inbound rule in the security group that is letting the MySQL traffic in, I'll show you. We'll delete this particular rule and we'll save these changes. So now if I try connecting to this database, it should not let me connect because it is restricting the MySQL traffic. As you can see, this is saying failed to connect. So I'll need to add this rule again. These are some security measures that we can do to improve the security of our systems. So now the connection should work again. Also, this will help you debug in case there are any issues during when you do the migration yourself. So this is the new migrated DB. As you can see, we don't have a database over here. What I'll do, I'll write a new SQL query to create a new database. Create database, and then I'll need to enter the database name. I'll keep the database name as migrated DB, and I'll run this command. And now I'll refresh the schema. It should show me another database over here. You might be remembering when I created the RDS, it gave me an option to initialize a database. If I would have initialized a database there as well, that would have been visible here, but I did not do that there. So this is how you create a new database. Now what we need to do is we need to import that particular backup that we exported. So I'll go to data import. I'll select import from self-contained file, and this is the file that we exported earlier. I'll open this file. Then I'll select the target schema to be migrated DB. That is the DB that we just created. Then start the import. So the import has been completed. Now if I go to schema, I'll go to tables, I'll go to WP options. The data is visible over here. So now if I go back to the WP config file, here I need to define the database name, which is migrated DB. I'll save this, and now we should be able to access our site. So that is it for today. Thanks a lot. I hope you like this video, and please forgive me if I was a bit slow at times. Thanks a lot.